So, hey guys, today we're once again talking about balance in Yu-Gi-Oh! And how it just isn't. So, today we're talking about archetypes, and we're just going to say it outright. Cards, and not just cards, just archetypes. They're not remotely the same power level. And what I mean by this is if we were to compare something like a Vanquish Soul, it is unironically just completely terrible in comparison to some other decks. And this is even more notable when you start comparing archetypes that were released around the same time, a year later, or even a year before, or whatever, right? So if we were to look at, for example, the differences between how these decks kind of like function, like we're going to use Titlement first, I guess. So, uh, all well, both of these decks are just dimensions apart. I would say, just they're not even within the same realm. So, with Titlement, if we were to go with full power tier, you have an insane amount of consistency over the Vanquish Soul cards. So if we just look archetypally first, so we have, well, I'll allow Rhoda, right? But if we go with the tier cards here, we technically, if we were to go truly full power, we have 3 copies of Perlorino. And then you also have 3 copies of Rhino Heart. And if we were to just stop at this is already way better than Vanquish Soul in terms of just starters, right? Because to get to Rosin is essentially what your deck has to do to kind of function. So the only 2 ways you really have into Rosin are just hard opening Rosin, or you would have Stake Your Soul plus a fire monster, which is contradictory because aside from Rosin, you would just have Xiaolong. So if we did not include Ash Blossom to a Spring, and just were to focus on the archetype, then you only have Xiaolong and Pluton. And Pluton is honestly just kind of trash, so you would just have essentially Xiaolong. And that would mean that you would need to open Xiaolong plus Stake Your Soul to make Stake Your Soul kind of worthwhile. Aside from that, you would have any dark monster, so you can special summon Heavy Burger and then hopefully draw into a Rosin. So you can then normal summon Rosin, which is just, yeah, that's just terrible. So you also have Rhoda technically, but Tier also has Rhoda, Reinhardt also being a warrior. And yeah, the consistency for this deck, they're very far apart. And this is even more telling when this is the only starter you have in Vanquish Soul, pretty much. Everything else is just terrible and leads nowhere. So if we were to start with Madlove, then we would have to normal summon Madlove to add Vanquish Soul Dust Devil, Continue, or Snow Devil, and none of these cards really do anything. Just straight up. So your only option is just Vanquish Soul Dust Devil, which just is a non-targeting Book of Moon, which is not really that useful, unless it's the mirror kinda. But yeah, so we do Dust Devil effect, and then we can do Mad Love to keep searching our spells and traps. But we have limited numbers of spells and traps that we could run in the main deck, and usually you don't want to run duplicates for various reasons. So you run out of targets with Mad Love very quick, but you're not guaranteed to draw into, let's say, like a Rosin. So even if you were looping the Mad Love, which you can't do so that efficiently anyways, but even if you were able to do so, you would just be grabbing useless cards after you've grabbed Dust Devil. The Mad Love pretty much does nothing. So yeah, terrible. But if we were to start with any of these cards, you have Sharon. So Sharon plus any monster, mill 3, and then you have probably combo situationally. And then we have Merly, normal summon Merly. Same kind of deal, but you don't have to discard, I guess. And that could be combo. We have Activate Tier Cash. to mill 3, which once again could be combo. So usually I think the ratios would look something like 1-2 cash maybe, or 2-1-2. That depends actually, I suppose. It might be even 2-3 if we're considering the Shizu cards being unlimited as well. But yeah, if we were just to focus mostly on tier, that would be 3 cards here, 3 cards here, 3 cards here, and then another 3 cards here, which can all be starters. So that is just in terms of 1 cards, you would only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in comparison to Vanquish Soul's 3. So you literally have 3 times the amount of starters already. And I mean, technically, Happiness can kind of be a starter if your opponent is going first. So we don't have to include that, but you know, it's there. And then you have Foolish Burial Goods and Celiac. And Foolish Burial Goods being at 3. That puts us at 12. And then you have Foolish Burial, which could technically send Tier Cash or one of the Ishizu Millers, which mills 5, which is more than 3. So it's even more likely to kind of resolve with stuff. And this is only considering just 1 cards. With only 1 cards. And I guess there's also Instant Fusion for Kick Hellos, which is also more or less combo. So yeah, that's a lot more targets than you have in Vanquish Soul. And that's just in terms of consistency, and that's not even considering what the decks actually do yet. So yeah, that's all we need tier 4 here, so we'll just remove these cards now. So yeah, this is before considering what the cards do, like at all, or the synergies, or the fact that this can play on turn 0. The amount of consistency in this deck and the amount of starters you have, it dwarfs what Vanquish Soul has. So yeah, pretty terrible in comparison. And if we go with like Kashtira without the cards being limited, it's not actually as good as I guess Element, because you only have technically 3 of Unicorn plus 3 of Raids off, which is just 6 cards, but that's still more than 3, which is not hard. But even if we go with 2 card combos, that only adds Stake Your Soul plus Fire, which is not really that great, versus like pretty much any Kashtira card that you can summon with Theosis. And then we have like Birth plus Rise Heart, Birth plus Fenrir, which is also combo. And then there are a few other combinations here. So if you can make Shangri-La in defense position, that eventually gets to Unicorn, which gets into everything else. So that gets there as well. And technically, you can run Planet Pathfinder or the Raitoff, which you couldn't do with Tier, because with Perlarino, you in general want a normal summon unless you have Sheeran, in which case that would be like close to a 3 card combo, which is not as great. But yeah, we can get there with just activating rates off mostly. So that's like a 9 card, 9/1 cards with an asterisk. So it can get places, I suppose. Much further than Vanquish Soul, at least, I guess. And there are a lot of different archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh! There are some that essentially get what we might as well call the Vanquish Soul treatment, where we have a somewhat cool deck with somewhat cool like principle or concept, but the deck is just held back by itself because of something goofy. Like in this case, Vanquish Soul's worst issue is it has really bad consistency issues, because you know the deck essentially revolves around Rosin, but you don't have any ways to really get into Rosin, which is just a big ol' lag. Huh? What? Big ol' question mark. And if you lose access to Rosin, you would have to find another way into Rosin, which is also just what, really. So for example, if I were to just banish your Rosin, doesn't even have to be face down, just banish it or even return it to the deck. How do you get access to another Rosin? Well, you draw into that exact copy of Rosin pretty much. Just again, that's how you get access to that Rosin, because you can't really search it. With Stake Your Soul, it's not that great either. I mean, Stake Your Soul is simultaneously a good card and a bad card, so it's a good card because, you know, you technically don't have to perform a normal summon anymore after resolving Stake Your Soul. But, of course, the bad news of resolving Stake Your Soul is you're playing Stake Your Soul. And therefore, you're also playing the Vanquish Soul cards. And also, you can't search Stake Your Soul. So, yeah. In general, I'd say Pain and Suffering. So, yeah. I would rate this pretty low in terms of just, well, decks. Not insanely a fan of the low, terrible consistency on this. And then if we were to look at some other decks released at close to the same time, so we could check what was released near around this point in time. But yeah, not too far away would be something like Branded, which has like insane amounts of consistency and grind game. So Vanquish still has okay grind game. It's not even that great because you can't recycle the spells and traps, so you actually run out of targets to search for your monsters, and also you run out of spells and traps to search, but eventually you will have access to like a draw every turn, burn, and all that. And technically, you could out Crooked Cook, which is cool, you know, you have an out with burn, because you have an okay amount of burn in this deck. But yeah. The forms of, well, interaction, it's pretty fine, but it's also kind of lacking in certain ways. So one of the weaknesses of Vanquish Soul in particular is if you do not open Stake Your Soul, if you're a normal summon or the only monster you control is removed from the field, you actually can't play the game because you won't be able to control any monsters. So that just ends your turn completely, which is kind of sad. But alright, let's continue on. I can't really think of any other decks that were released close to Vanquish Soul, honestly. So, alright. If we were to just compare with, like, decks released around the same time, Vanquish Soul, still not that great. And there are quite a few other archetypes like this, and archetypes that have gotten support, like Ninja, which have gotten, like, pretty crummy support. So, in terms of support, we take a look at Yugioh, right? And then we have Baku and Green Ninja, right? And then we look at something like a Math Mech, and then we just give this a good old long stare. Math Mech Circular. Okay, so this card has to be specifically added to my hand, but not by drawing it, and then I can special summon it, which I mean this effect. Honestly, this is like the best card out of these three, I would say. And then this can add a Ninja or Ninjutsu art card from your graveyard or face-up spell and trap zone. Except for itself, return it to the hand. And then we have Green Ninja, which has the effect to special summon itself, and then the Book of Moon effect. And then after this, we have Yugioh the Gravity Ninja, with the effect here of the Book of Moon, and then you cannot change the card's battle positions or whatever. So we have this guy. So the issue with both these guys is, well, first off with these two in particular, this, you don't want to ever open this. If you open this, you essentially suffer, because this for some reason does nothing on normal summon. It only activates on special summon. And the effect to special summon itself from hand, it has to not be in your hand, unintuitively, more or less. And then Yugioh the Gravity Ninja can pretty much only be exclusively special summoned from deck. Well, there are like some cards that could special summon Yugioh from hand. Well, there's one in particular being Tobari, but Tobari requires it to also be in the hand, and you don't really have a way to super reliably search for Tobari, I would say. So that's awkward. But essentially, you know, this card is a garnet, this card is a garnet, this card is kind of also just not particularly useful, except for certain situations where it is. So this one is weird, but we'll leave it at that. And then we have Mathemax Circular, where you know you want to open this, and this just does way more. So this can send a Mathmech for cost, and then you can special summon that Mathmech, being Sigma. So we can send Sigma, special summon Sigma, and then make Helm Version. And then even if we stop at this point, this is kind of combo, right? And this doesn't cost your normal summon. And then we can Elm Version to send the Sigma back into the graveyard for next turn, so we can summon Sigma again on a later turn. Whereas, you know, also worth mentioning is that all three of these guys are technically cards you want to play, but also cards you don't want to open because they do nothing by themselves. So if I had, for example, a hand with Green Ninja, Baku, and Geo, it's a completely garbage hand. Even if I open Sigma, Sigma's like not that bad. I can just special summon Sigma from my hand, and then send a different Mathmech monster, and I'd still be perfectly fine with Circular. So dimensions apart. And if we take a look at this, these cards were not released too far apart. So we have Snake Eye cards. We won't even fully get into it, but you know, Snake Eye. And then we have Ashen. These were released like pretty close, honestly. Not too far apart. And then, yeah, I'm not even going to bother breaking it down because, yeah, Ashen is just so bad. I can't remember the names of any of the cards. Like, it's erased out of my memory. It's pretty bad. So, yeah. Well, it gives some credit to this little, what's the word for this? I don't know. Whatever. Ashened, more like Ascend. True. That's just completely true. So whatever that counts as, is that like a hyperbole or something? Whatever. Yeah. Ashened, completely terrible. It was released like close to Snake Eyes, not too far apart in Master Duel. So yeah, pretty terrible. And then we have something like a Millennium, which is actually the cards are pretty good, actually. Surprisingly, so this card is technically able to get into Exodia. Like a lot of these cards are able to get into the Fusion Exodia. And where is this exactly? Okay. So this is essentially, you could argue, a 1 card. This is a 1 card. This is a 1 card. This is kind of a 2 card. You just need any monster in your hand. And then you can get into the Ankh. And then you also have the Sengenjin. So just off of this, you have 15 cards that are all 1 card combos that get into your Exodia, which is essentially, I guess, full combo for Millennium. So that's pretty tough, I suppose. And what was released around this time? I think there was something really bad that was released close to this, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Oh, right. Ashened. I believe Ashened was in the like 1 or 2 selections before this. Oh, right. And Ashened, what does this do again? In terms of 1 card combos, do you even have those in Ashened? Okay, let's see. No, normal summon Priestess. Add a Ashen card from your deck to your hand. Let's just check real quick. So we have Obsidim. What does Obsidim do if we add it? Nothing. Is there a single card we can add that does anything with the kind of best card in the deck here? Rekindling of the Ashen, Awakening of Vidos. Awakening of Vidos is not an Ashen card, so you can't add this with Priestess. Rekindling. Place from Vanish or in the graveyard. Yeah, that does nothing. Extinguishing the Ashen. Send one dark pyro monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then you can add one level 5 or higher pyro monster from your graveyard to the hand. So we can send a guy, add it back to our hand. I don't think this deck has any one-card combos, that is to say, aside from maybe Awakening of Vidos. Yeah, this is the only one. So this is like same problem as Vanquish Soul, but even worse because you don't even have, well, like, actually, I think it's better and worse simultaneously, but no, it's around the same, I guess. So, pretty simply, terrible. Absolutely awful, and doesn't really do that much either. In terms of like what the deck does, I think this is probably worse than Vanquish Soul. And consistency wise, it might be a little bit better overall because you have more 2-card combos, whereas you don't really have many good options with Vanquish Soul. Real quick, we gotta check King. King requires Obsidian, Dash in City, do special summon from your hand. And yeah, that's the only way you can special summon King, otherwise King is a brick. Yeah, there really is nothing you can do with these cards. Okay, cool. Great. So, if you don't open the field spell, you really have nothing going on, I suppose. And even if you do open the field spell, you still don't really have much going on. So, yeah. Pretty awkward for a variety of reasons. The fact that this card can be linked off, kind of annoying. That can be used as link material. I just much rather it couldn't be used as link material, period. But alright. I think that one change would improve the deck by an okay amount. Not even that much, but you know, it is what it is. If we just real quick go UR search and then scroll down, I think we can quickly find another bad archetype. Would not be hard. So, just going to take a quick look here and look for some new cards. Gimmick Puppet is kind of just okay. It's not like that great. It's not like that bad either. It's kind of like middling. And I don't think I've pulled in a lot of the more recent selections. My Forest on release was kind of underwhelming till the Asmina cards were released, and then we had LZ, which is pretty disgusting just in general. But aside from that, it's like meh. And then what was the other underwhelming archetype? I'm pretty sure there was something else. There must have been, unless we've just mostly been getting support. Oh yeah, we've got the A to Z stuff, which, I mean, I don't have much to say about that stuff right now. Would have to look into it a little bit more. Aside from that, I don't think there's like anything super interesting. Oh right. Oh yeah. Forgot these cards existed. Right. These cards, the Chimera cards. So you have like okay consistency because you have Quaddle and Mirror Sword Knight. So we can go like Cornfield Quaddle, add Mirror Sword Knight, Mirror Sword Knight. Either way, if we have Mirror Sword Knight, we can then go special summon Big Wing Berfomet. And then the most you can really do is not much. We have like make Guardian Chimera on our opponent's turn. We have special summon Diabels. And we have Floodgate our opponent with the Dark Barrier statue. which is completely useless if our opponent is playing a dark deck. So yeah, not that great. Also, the barrier statue, I guess, that could technically just be run over by battle, which is also kind of awkward. So I'd say not very good in general. You do have Guardian Chimera Pop, which is non-targeting, which is something, and it also draws you some cards. But does this deck do a whole lot on its own? Like, not really. As an engine, is it that strong? Not really. Did I forget this deck actually existed? Yeah, definitely. So yeah, this was probably released at around the same time as Vanquish Soul. Now that I think about it, like not too far off. So what does the deck do? Well, now that I think about it, doesn't it also have conflicting normal summons with the Gazelle as well? This can be special, and technically this can also be special. Let's see, you can add an illusion monster from your deck to your hand, and then is there a monster reborn that you can kind of do? I mean, kinda, right? You have Big Wing Baphomet. If you use this, it can reborn an illusion monster in your graveyard. So that's a thing, I suppose. In terms of like what the deck does, it also has the issue of technically not being able to interact too well with back row, which is fixed a little bit by the Diabels, but it's not even that great. Yeah. I'd say pretty middle of the pack, or even a little bit less than. So going first and going second ability, kinda just mid. It's not like particularly strong in either aspect, unless your game plan might really get going. Like you make a Beatrice or something and then you send rollback plus Ghost Meets Girl. That could be something. Or it could be not a whole lot of something. Yeah. Not that great, but if we actually compare what this deck can do versus, like, let's say, Beansmith, Tailment, Yshtera, just a lot of other decks like Voiceless Voice, and Branded. We'll see that this deck is in fact pretty outclassed. And the point of this video, what I'm trying to say is essentially, why is it that a lot of these archetypes are just completely getting shafted? Why can't they just be made stronger? In the sense that they would be on a level playing field, you know? Or even within the same, like, dimension. So with Vanquish Soul, of course, can't really compete that well with, like, a Tailwind, because Tailwind's just straight up stupid when we're considering, like, full power tier, right? You're playing on turn 0, and you have, like, Herald of Orange Light, which is essentially completely just stupid. So if we were to activate Herald of Orange Light and you're playing like not a mirror, because we're going to assume, like, in most cases when I'm talking about things, it's not going to be the mirror, but if we do Herald of Orange Light, sending any Ishizu card, you cannot call by the orange of Herald Light because of two different possibilities. So the first possibility will be that you just can't call by period anymore because we sent a shuffler, and shufflers banish for cost as cost and as a quick effect, so you can't call by that. And if you try to call by, I'll shuffle back the Herald of Orange Light, and then your called by just did nothing. And then if we send a Miller, then they can potentially combo on your turn, which means you just get completely screwed. And it can also, of course, send, once again, the shufflers, which, depending on your deck exactly, I suppose, the shufflers can also count as an interaction, which is not really good. So yeah, there's that as well. So that's really just pain and suffering, I'd say. And then in comparison to that turn 0 playing, we have a pretty normal deck, all things considered, with Mirror Sword Knight. I think, like, with this What would this even compete with? I can't think of many decks this would do super well against, like have like an overwhelming edge or anything. Like, you know, considering decks go first, decks go second, hand traps exist, kind of seems fair. Well, alright. But compared to something like a Vanquish Soul where you have like a deck revolved around essentially one guy and you have no ways to get into that guy, then yeah, terrible. Why don't we have ways to get into Rosin, for example? With Altergeist, this is also like insanely awkward, where you don't have any one cards that do things. Like we don't need to necessarily end on like 20 negates with a one card combo. It's just like even with normal summon Meloseek in Archetype, this does like nothing. So normal summon Meloseek, and then you can add Malwisp, and that's only if you play Link Revo. So otherwise, if you don't play Link Revo, you're just normal summoning Meloseek and passing, which does nothing. But if we assume that we are playing Link Revo, we can make Promethean Princess and Amble Whale, which does pretty much nothing still. And that is your only one card combo. Meloseek. Everything else is a nothing burger. Multi-faker does nothing, even if you have a trap plus multi-faker. Unless it would be something like spoofing, which would technically be a 3-card combo, because you need an alternate Geist card. Do you actually need to? No, actually you can just flip over the spoofing. Yeah, flip over spoofing, multi-faker summoned, shuffle back multi-faker, I guess, from your hand, add another guy like Meloseek for next turn, and then you're solid. And that's like the one and only 2-card you have with multi-faker that actually gets somewhere. But if we had something like an infinite impermanence, we do special summon multi-faker, add Silquatus. Silquatus returns multi-faker plus one of your opponent's cards, and then multi-faker doesn't have a way to be triggered anymore. Silquatus, this doesn't necessarily have a target to return anymore, unless you were to normal summon multi-faker, so you can return multi-faker. So now you have the worst loop of all time where you just normal summon multi-faker, and then you Silquatus, return the multi-faker. But you essentially do have to top deck a starter. Yeah, that's all you could hope for, really. Something like a Marionetter would be not bad, I suppose. Potentially. Actually, would it even be that good? Well, probably not, honestly. But some other 2-card combos you have are like Marionetter plus Meloseek, and then you have like Meloseek plus Bukri, and then you have Multi-Faker with Marionetter with a third Altergeist card, but specifically you also do not open Haunted Rock. So 3-card combo. Those are essentially all the combos you have. And we'll simply say it's not great, not consistent, and you're not that likely to open combo, unfortunately. And you do want to open more engine, but that means less room for non-engine, so less things you can do going second, essentially. Can't run as many hand traps, can't run as many board breakers, so you're suffering in all those regards. So yeah, Altergeist support didn't really do a whole lot. You have new things you can do, but it's not like additive. It doesn't really add anything to the deck, I would say. Well, that's what I would argue, right? For the most part, like Malwisp is kind of nice to have. Like a lot of decks wouldn't complain if they got a Malwisp, but also at the same time, yeah, Malwisp doesn't get you that far. Unfortunately, Malwisp by itself not really caring. And Malwisp is also kind of a brick the same way like a Yugioh would be. And if we were to compare the consistency of this deck to like pretty much every other deck, same kind of deal with Vanquish Soul where it's just terra bad. And I'm not even sure which deck has the worst consistency out of the two, like Altergeist and Vanquish Soul. But yeah. Your consistency is terrible, and what your deck does is, in the case of Altergeist, actually the full combo does have a lot of negates, Like, it's kind of ridiculous. So you have like, let me count. So we have Adminia effect. So that's Snatch Snail. Altergeist Protocol. So this prevents like an imperm from doing anything to your Altergeist cards. And your cards cannot be negated, right? So we have the effect of Hextia, which is not once per turn. So it's a bunch of spell trap negates, and then you have Silquatus. So Snatch Steal. This one is return a card to your opponent's hand. So in terms of monster interaction specifically, we have 1, 2, and then 3 with the protocol. In terms of spell trap negates, I think it's like 4 or 5 or something ridiculous. If you throw in Trick Varen, I think it's definitely that high. So that's like generously off of just like a 2-card combo. This is something like 9 interactions or something, like 9, 8, something ridiculous like that. But also, this entire combo can be stopped by like any hand trap, like any hand trap at all. Like the Imperm on Malwisp, and that would do it, I guess. Imperm on maybe the Multi-Faker, and that would do it. And you're trading 2 cards for 1, and we're talking about like mostly in terms of hand cards. So you would be down 2 cards and on nothing, and that's Altergeist for you. But with other more modern decks, you don't trade cards like 2 for 1 like this anymore. So in terms of like maybe something like Branded, similar-ish concept, kinda, not really-ish, where you need 2 cards to search out Branded Fusion sometimes. So idea of sending Albion plus Serenir, and that would require at least 2 different cards, and then you would be able to grab the Branded Fusion from the graveyard, try to activate it, and then if this gets negated, you essentially would have lost 2 cards in hand for this, more or less. Well, it depends on exactly the hand, but that's kind of the idea. So yeah, that's kind of how that would go, I guess. And with the decks that we're playing in the current meta, if we go with Fiendsmith, Azumina, Snake Eye, or whatever, you're activating like usually a 1-card starter of some sort, like Bonfire. You have a Bonfire, you have normal summon Snake Eye Ash, you have Activate, Engraver, whatever. So all of these cards, if you want to stop them, you would have to essentially throw a negate pretty much immediately to prevent them from getting too many bodies and whatnot. So there are certain points you would hit, and it only trades for the 1 card in hand versus the 2 you would have gone for from something like an Altergeist. So yeah, pretty simply put, if I was playing like Altergeist, I'm immediately in disadvantage versus any deck that is better, and that's just, well, better in the sense that, better consistency. You're more likely to see your cards, so I can't even play if I had no opponent sometimes. That's how bad these decks are in comparison to other decks. Like Vanquish Soul, like if you don't open Razin or a normal summon in general, like a Vanquish Soul normal, it's like just insanely terrible. I don't know how else to put it. You have absolutely nothing you can do, and you just have to pass until you hopefully draw a Razin, maybe. And your hand traps won't even buy you that much time, because your opponent has a lot more opportunities to draw a 1-card starter again than you are to draw something that can deal with it, I guess. This is really notable if we look at like a combo like this would be like terrible, but let's go with something like, let's say I have a really bad hand in Snake Eye, so I normal summon Ash Blossom Spring, and then I have to go original for Snake Eye Ash, and then you imperm my Snake Eye Ash. So I pass on essentially just Snake Eye Ash pass, so instead of doing that, I'll link it off for Link Rebuild. The next turn, I still have original simple spoils to return Snake Eye Ash, right? So that's better than what you would have, right? If you were playing like Altergeist, right? If I were to normal summon Meluseek, Link It Off, or Link Rebo, and then my Malwisp is negated, I just have no follow-up play or anything I can do from this point. And then if you were to imprint that, you know, you just run over that, I have to top deck something else. But with something like a Snake Eye Ash, plus Original Sinful in the graveyard, you can shuffle back the Snake Eye Ash and search a card. So in this case, the order is banish this, target one, add one. So in this case, then we can add, I guess like, this wouldn't be necessarily that great, but we could add a Poplar and then normal summon it to grab another Original Sinful Spoils, I suppose. Something like that. If we're thinking like in terms of peer, I guess that's what you could do. And then you have Original Sinful to try again on a later turn. And this would be like a ridiculously awful situation for Snake Eye, obviously, but the thing is you still have a play despite being like hit by an interruption, whereas I have absolutely nothing and I'm just praying. So worlds of difference. And I mean, if decks were at least like on the same playing field, you know, then maybe I would have more consistency in my cards here, like more starters and all that. Then I think we could consider the game like kind of fair and a little bit more competitive in terms of like just all of the decks in general being more competitive with each other, and we would have uh more gaming happening in Yu-Gi-Oh, I suppose. Because right now, before like we even see the deck's interactions, the deck has to beat itself essentially with some of these decks, which is just terrible. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.